and I'm currently active for the Da Nang Art for Children Gallery of Vietnam Cultural Exchange. It was set up by one, and I know her because when I was the first director of the largest Vietnamese terracotta park museum near Hoi An, she was intern and was helping with the educational activities that I had developed. Like here, the children did one of the balance activities. So I started exhibiting about 60 years ago. As the son of a visual artist, I literally grew up between art and making art. Originally, I worked for all kinds of museums and cultural centers in Belgium, France and the Netherlands, until I started my own bookshop and gallery in the early 80s. First with exhibition for adults and experimental presentation projects, but soon also for children. This after a visiting young girl asked, "Where are the children's exhibitions?" After all, there was a section of books for adults and a section for young people, but we only had exhibitions for the adult section. Thus I started to exhibit art specially made for children, because I was keeping in mind that children are smaller than adults. The work also hung on children's height. And that was the reason for artist Juliette Witt to make this drawing. What I did was quite unique, and soon we received requests from libraries and schools to borrow our exhibitions. The schools also asked whether there were any related activity programs. Coincidentally, I studied educational science, so I started developing educational material. The schools were very enthusiastic about this because my activities were in line with their education, which is easily explained because most of the usual special activities at schools were devised and carried out by people with artistic and creative background. The educational value is that children learn to express themselves. However, one can also start from a very specific educational goal and come up with an activity for it, and that is how I work, and that is more in line with the work of the teachers. So what then are, or what is called a real educational project? First of all, they are not courses. I prefer to describe them as layered introductions. They are not aimed at transferring specialist knowledge and skills, while that is typical for a course. On the one hand, educational activities are aimed at developing general skills that can be used in different situations. On the other hand, on a specific skill that helps to develop certain parts of learning. Another big difference is that with a course, it's clear for the participants what they are going to learn, while in educational project the actual goal is often something other than the theme of the activity itself, and that is the layering of the project. Let me give an example of this right away. One of the popular topics for schools is whether there are activities to teach children how to manage their money. The surprise is often great when it turns out that none of the activities that I propose have anything to do with money. Well, based on the fact that children who cannot handle money usually hate to talk about it, I start to see what the actual problem is. And one of the problems is that because they spend money now, they end up without it later. So they must learn to make choices and motivate them. A good activity for this is to introduce children to different visual art techniques. The use of colored pencils, watercolor and oil paint. With a colored pencil, you can easily erase an incorrect lines, as shows on WikiHow. The drawing is also ready immediately. With watercolor, you can create beautiful atmospheric scenes, but you cannot correct a mistake. While with oil paint, this is a work of Turner, you can paint over a mistake, but it takes very long time before the painting to dry. So although the activity focused on what they are imaging, what they are painting, we will talk to them in a casual way about why they choose that specific technique and how they plan to solve any problems. It is this layeredness that appeals great to teachers. The focus is on what they paint, but the casual conversation is about the choices they made. When a child is bad at something, we start by finding out why they are bad at something and what skills they need to develop. We then come up with projects that the children like to do and where those skills can be stimulated while they are busy with something they like very much. We then describe which specific parts of those activities are important to achieve the goal and then indicate what the guidance should be pay attention to and how to act. As in the example about making choices, of course you have to say something about what they have made. Where in the concluding conversation you can, instead of once more telling how beautiful it is, again highlight the choices they made and why they are interesting and why you think it's so great that the child has thought about it that way. That's actually a much more interesting reward than saying, oh, it's a nice drawing, particularly because that part of the activity is not competitive. So the main question is, which skills should be stimulated and how should that be done? To answer that, we first have to look at what learning is. By learning we mean that you acquire certain skills more or less permanently. Learning is not a single process, but we can identify several processes. Here is an overview made by Professor van Pereira. He describes the following learning process: insight promoting learning, in which we need to discriminate between learning and exercising standard solutions on one hand and solution method on the other. Acquiring factual knowledge, memorizing or learn by heart, creating automatisms, learning to apply standard rules, algorithms, learning to adapt standard rules, heuristics, learning to learn, dynamic learning, learning during a spontaneous activity. You find the descriptions of those processes and the explanations on our Patreon site. But in each case, learning is therefore very complex and finding solutions to problems can be done in different learning ways. Let's take, for example, that a company does a lot by telephone and wants the employees to learn to use the telephones as efficiently as possible. Person A, who is good at memorizing, trains himself by remembering customers' telephone numbers and therefore he becomes very good at it. Person B, who is good at learning to promote insight, finds out where it's easiest to find those telephone numbers. The result is that when it comes to a limited number of telephone numbers, person A performs much better than person B. But after a while, numbers are added, some disappear, some change, then B's method turns out to be much more efficient, as he does not have to memorize everything again and again and again. So the result of our learning is a qualitative change in our actions. Improvements can also involve learning to do something in a different way. But what does to act actually mean? Simply put, we can say that every action consists of different parts that we can divide into three important types: exploratory actions, executive actions, and controlling actions. Learning difficulties are usually caused by poor orientation and poor control. Many activities are focused on the outcome, and whatever that is, it's customary to always praise children for what they have created. In the example I gave about using the different techniques, I already indicate that the emphasis should be on the process and not on the result. Actions consist of partial actions, but partial actions can also degenerate into automatisms. We get up and we walk. That happens automatically from a certain point on, but there are different actions and you have to learn them first. I would like to demonstrate with a very simple example why knowledge of the structure of automatism is so important. A child has reading difficulties. It has difficulty recognizing certain words. Now, it may just be that it wants to read too quickly, and this may again be because the story is so interesting and exciting. But in that case, it should be able to read other texts better. It may also be that the child has written too little or too carelessly, because as you write, you build up your visual vocabulary. Why wasn't that writing good? Too much disturbing noise or other disturbing things? Or was the ballpoint pen that was used automatically such that it was too easy to write with? In the past, children wrote with pen and ink, which was much slower, but possibly that speed was better for the child to absorb the word. In short, by carefully examining all automated processes, various options for optimizing certain activities become clearer. In some of the upcoming videos, I will give examples of activities we do in the Art for Children gallery and projects we have done in the past that could in principle be done again. Our Patreon site discussed in detail the educational value of particular activities. You can also contact us and ask specific questions. Patreon proceeds are fully used to develop new exhibitions and projects. And whenever you're in Da Nang, it's always a pleasure to meet you, on our place or on yours. See you. Thank you for watching this.